The phone rang at 2:17 a.m. That harsh electronic chirp that always means something's wrong. I knew before I even grabbed my phone that this call would change everything. My name is Harper, and until that moment I thought I had my life perfectly mapped out. Funny how quickly certainty can crumble. "Harper, honey, you need to come home." My stepmother Evelyn's voice cracked, something I'd never heard before. "It's your father. There's been an accident at the docks." The word accident hung in the air like smoke. My father, Samuel Winslow, hadn't had an accident in 30 years of commercial fishing. He was too careful, too methodical. "How bad?" I managed to ask, already throwing clothes into a suitcase while my husband Ryan stirred beside me. "They're saying he fell, but—" Evelyn paused, her breath hitching. "Something's not right, Harper. Richard was the one who found him, but his story keeps changing. First, he said he heard a crash, then he said he wasn't even there when it happened." Richard Hale, my father's business partner and supposedly closest friend. The man who'd been at every family dinner, every Christmas, every milestone since I was a kid. Something cold settled in my stomach at the mention of his name. "Is Dad conscious?" I wedged the phone between my ear and shoulder, booking the first flight to Alaska on my laptop. In and out. "The doctors say he's stable, but—" Another pause. "He keeps mumbling about the books. About numbers not adding up." Ryan sat up, rubbing his eyes. "Babe, what's going on?" I held up a finger, focusing on Evelyn's words as she continued. "Richard's been acting strange ever since it happened. He's already talking about running the company while your father recovers, making decisions without consulting anyone." "I'll be on the first flight out," I said, checking my screen. 4 hours. "I'll grab a cab from the airport." "Harper." Evelyn's voice dropped to nearly a whisper. "Be careful who you trust when you get here. Things aren't what they seem." After hanging up, I turned to Ryan, who was already shaking his head. "You can't just drop everything and run to Alaska. You have that merger presentation on Monday." "My father's in the hospital," I said, zipping up my suitcase. "The merger can wait." "Can it?" Ryan ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every movement. "We've been working toward this for months. Your promotion depends on it." I stopped packing and really looked at my husband. The man I'd met in college, who'd once supported every decision I made, now seemed more concerned about a business deal than my injured father. "I'll handle it remotely," I said, but we both knew that wasn't true. The Silicon Valley finance world doesn't look kindly on family emergencies. "At least let me come with you," Ryan offered, but his tone suggested he was hoping I'd say no. "Stay. Handle the presentation. I'll call you when I know more." I kissed his cheek, already feeling the distance growing between us. As my Uber drove through the empty streets of San Francisco, my mind raced with possibilities. Richard Hale, the man who'd helped my father build Winslow Seafood from nothing into a multi-million-dollar operation. The same man who'd given me my first job, teaching me how to balance books when I was 16. My phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn. "Richard's asking about access to the main accounts. Says it's urgent." Another buzz. "Your father woke up for a moment. He said to tell you to check the safe in his office." The old one behind the fishing photo. I didn't know what I'd find in that safe, but I knew one thing for certain: my father never fell. Not in 30 years of walking those docks in every kind of weather. Someone had pushed him, and I was going to find out why. The city lights faded behind me as the car headed toward the airport. Ahead lay Alaska, home, and answers I wasn't sure I was ready to face. But ready or not, I was about to uncover just how deep betrayal could run in a family business built on trust. The hospital corridor smelled like industrial cleaner and old coffee. I'd been pacing outside Dad's room for 20 minutes, waiting for the doctor to finish his morning rounds. That's when I saw Richard walking toward me, his usual confident stride somehow more hesitant. "Harper," he said, arms open for a hug I didn't want to give. "I came as soon as I could get away from the morning shipments." I stepped back, pretending to check my phone. Funny, I thought you were there when it happened. His smile flickered. Right, yes. I meant, I've been dealing with the aftermath. Someone has to keep things running. Before I could press him further, Evelyn emerged from Dad's room, her face tight with worry. He's asking for you, Harper. She glanced at Richard, adding, just Harper. Inside, Dad looked smaller somehow, wrapped in starched hospital sheets. His weathered face was pale, but his eyes were sharp as ever. The safe, he whispered, gripping my hand. Behind the phishing photo, I know. Evelyn told me. I squeezed his hand. What am I looking for? He shook his head slightly. Just look. You'll understand. His eyes drifted to the door, where Richard's shadow was visible through the frosted glass. Don't let him know. A nurse came in to check his vitals, and I stepped out to find Richard and Evelyn in what looked like a heated discussion by the coffee machine. The board meeting can't wait, Richard was saying. We need to reassign signing authority temporarily. Samuel's barely been here 24 hours, Evelyn shot back. Nothing's so urgent it can't wait a few days. Actually, I cut in. I'd like to attend that board meeting. Richard's expression shifted so quickly I almost missed it, surprise, then calculation, then that practiced smile again. Harper, you've been away from the business for years. These meetings can be quite complex. I have a master of business administration and manage million-dollar accounts in Silicon Valley, I reminded him. I think I can handle a fishing company's board meeting. My phone buzzed, Ryan again. His third call since I'd landed. I ignored it. Of course, Richard recovered smoothly. Meeting's at 2. I'll have my assistant send you the details. He checked his watch. I should get back to the office. Lots to manage with Samuel. Indisposed. After he left, Evelyn pulled me into the family waiting room. There's something else you should know. Last week, I overheard your father and Richard arguing in the office. Something about missing inventory and numbers not matching. Did Dad say anything specific? No, but the next day, he spent hours in his office with the old accounting books. Then, yesterday. She twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit I remembered from childhood. Yesterday, Richard asked me for the combination to your father's personal safe. Said Samuel had authorized it. My phone buzzed again. This time I answered. Ryan, I can't talk right. The merger's falling apart, he cut in. They're asking questions about your presentation. You need to come back. I watched a nurse wheel my father passed for some test, his eyes closed, an oxygen tube under his nose. No, I don't. Harper, be reasonable. Your father's stable. The business will survive a few days without you. Will it? I snapped, thinking of Richard's eager grab for power. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like everything's falling apart. Then let it, Ryan said softly. Maybe it's time to let go of the family business. We could use this as an opportunity to... I hung up. Evelyn touched my arm. Everything okay? Fine, I lied. I need to go check something at the office before that board meeting. As I drove to Winslow Seafood's headquarters, my mind raced. Dad's safe. Richard's changing story. The argument about missing inventory. It was all connected, but I couldn't see the pattern yet. I parked in Dad's spot, let Richard see that and draw his own conclusions, and headed for the office. The fishing photo hung exactly where it always had, showing Dad and Richard 20 years younger, holding up their first big catch as business partners. I reached for the frame, then stopped. Through the office window, I could see Richard returning early from the hospital, moving with purpose toward the building. Time to find out what was worth pushing my father off a dock to hide. I had exactly 3 minutes before Richard would reach his office. The safe clicked open with the combination I'd memorized years ago, Dad's superstition about keeping it unchanged finally paying off. Inside, beneath stacks of old contracts, I found a worn leather ledger and a USB drive. Quick photos of the ledger pages, then everything back exactly as I'd found it. I was closing the photo frame when Richard's voice carried down the hallway, accompanied by unfamiliar footsteps. "The insurance adjusters are satisfied," he was saying. "Just routine questions about the accident." I slipped into the adjoining break room just as Richard and two men in suits entered his office. Through the thin wall, their conversation was perfectly clear. "The transfer needs to happen before the end of the quarter," one man said. "Our buyers won't wait." Richard's chair creaked. Samuel's accident complicated things. His daughter's back in town asking questions. "Handle it," the second man said flatly. "Or the deal's off and everyone learns about the missing shipments." My phone buzzed in my pocket loudly. The voices in Richard's office stopped. I held my breath, hearing footsteps approach the break room door. The last second, I ducked behind the vending machine. The door opened. A long pause. "Probably the cleaning crew earlier," Richard said. "Now about those shipping manifests." I waited until they left the building before emerging. My hand shook as I pulled up the photos I'd taken. The ledger entries showed systematic discrepancies: shipments logged but never delivered, payments recorded but never deposited. Small amounts spread over years, adding up to millions. "I thought I might find you here." I jumped. Ryan stood in the doorway, looking exhausted in his rumpled suit. "Surprised you remembered where the office was," I said. "Harper, this has to stop." He stepped closer. "The merger partners are threatening to walk." "Everything we've worked for." "Everything you've worked for," I corrected. "Did you know?" I held up my phone, showing him the ledger entries. "Did you know what Richard was doing when you pushed me to stay in California?" Ryan's expression shifted. "I knew the company had cash flow issues. Richard reached out last year, asked if I could help arrange some private investors." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. "Last year? You've known for a year that my father's company was in trouble and never said anything?" "I was trying to protect you." Ryan ran his hands through his hair. "Richard said he could handle it internally. That involving you would only hurt Samuel." "Right. And now Dad's in the hospital with a cracked skull. And Richard's in his office making deals with mystery men about missing shipments." I pushed past Ryan toward the door. "I need to get these numbers to the police." Ryan grabbed my arm. "Think about what you're doing. One phone call from me and those merger partners walk. Your career in finance would be over." I stared at my husband, really seeing him for the first time. "You'd do that? Destroy my career to protect Richard?" "To protect you," he insisted. "From throwing away everything for a failing family business in Alaska." My phone buzzed again, Evelyn this time. "Harper, come quick. Your father's taken a turn. And Richard's been asking about access to the offshore accounts." "I have to go," I told Ryan, pulling free. "Harper, please. Just sleep on it. We can figure this out together." But I was already running to my car. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I saw Richard and his visitors emerging from the building. One of them pointed at my car, and Richard's face darkened with recognition. The hospital, I found Evelyn pacing outside Dad's room. "The doctors say his blood pressure's spiking. They're running tests." I showed her the ledger photos. "It's worse than we thought. Richard's been stealing for years, and now he's trying to sell the company out from under us." Evelyn's face went pale. "There's something else you need to see." She pulled an envelope from her purse. "I found this in your father's desk this morning. It's from your mother, dated just before she died." I took the envelope with trembling hands, but before I could open it, a code blue alarm blared from Dad's room. As medical staff rushed past us, I caught a glimpse of his monitors flatlining. The letter would have to wait. Right now, I had to decide: chase after the doctors or use these precious minutes to get to those offshore accounts before Richard did. The doctors saved Dad barely. As I sat by his bed at 3 a.m., watching his chest rise and fall with mechanical precision, my mother's unopened letter burned in my pocket. But before I could read it, my laptop pinged with an alert I'd set up to monitor the company's accounts. Someone was trying to access the offshore funds. I pulled up the banking portal, fingers flying across the keyboard. The transfer request had come from Richard's computer, but the authorization code was wrong. 3 failed attempts already. 2 more and the account would freeze. My phone lit up with Ryan's face. I declined the call, then hesitated and texted, "Did Richard ask you about any banking codes?" His response came instantly. "Don't do anything rash. I'm coming up there." The laptop pinged again. 4th failed attempt. A nurse walked in to check Dad's vitals. "Someone's asking for you at the desk," she said. "Says it's urgent." The nurse's station, I found Marcus Chen, Dad's old friend from the docks. His weathered face was grave. "I should have come forward sooner," he said, leading me to a quiet corner. "The day of the accident, I saw your father and Richard arguing on the pier. Richard said something about making it look natural." My blood went cold. "Why didn't you tell the police?" Marcus looked away. "Richard. He knows things. About my immigration status when I first started working here. Your father helped me get legal, but Richard kept the original paperwork. As insurance," he said. The laptop pinged one final time. 5th failed attempt. Count frozen. My phone exploded with texts. "Richard, stop whatever you're doing. You don't understand what's at stake." Ryan, already at the airport. "Don't talk to anyone until I get there." Evelyn, Richard just called. "He's coming to the hospital." Marcus touched my arm. "There's more." The night before the accident, I overheard Richard on the phone. He was talking about some kind of deadline and about how Samuel was becoming a problem. The elevator dinged. Richard stepped out, followed by the 2 men from his office. They split up, one heading toward Dad's room, one toward the emergency exit, Richard walking straight toward me. "Harper," he called, voice carefully controlled. "We need to talk about those accounts." I grabbed Marcus's arm and pulled him into the stairwell. "Get to Dad's room. Don't let anyone in except medical staff. Call security if you have to." Back in the hallway, I faced Richard. "Funny time for banking, isn't it? 3 in the morning. You're making a mistake," he said, stepping closer. "Those accounts, they're not what you think. Your father set them up years ago for emergencies. Like pushing him off a dock when he discovered you were stealing?" Something shifted in Richard's eyes. "You don't want to do this, Harper. Think about Ryan's career. Your future in California. All that could disappear with one phone call. Are you threatening me or negotiating? It's getting hard to tell the difference." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Both. I helped build this company while you were off playing banker in Silicon Valley. I've earned my share. By stealing it piece by piece? By doing what had to be done." His composure cracked. "Your father's too stubborn to see it, but the industry's changing. Without those side deals, we'd have gone under years ago." My phone buzzed. "Evelyn, police are here." "Stall him." "Show me," I said to Richard. "Show me the books, explain the deals. Prove you were helping. Now you want to listen?" He checked his watch. "Fine. My office, first thing in the morning. We'll go through everything." "No," I said. "Now. While Dad's stable and I have time." Richard studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "My car's outside." As we walked toward the elevator, I saw the police talking to Marcus by Dad's room. Richard saw them too. His hand clamped around my arm. "You're really your father's daughter," he said quietly. Too stubborn to take the easy way out. The elevator doors opened. Inside, his grip tightened. "Ground floor," he said to his associate, "or the roof. Your choice, Harper. Let's see how well you handle heights." "Ground floor," I said, meeting Richard's eyes. His associate's finger hovered over the elevator buttons. We both know you're not going to throw me off any roofs with police downstairs. Richard's grip loosened slightly. Smart girl. Always calculating the odds. The elevator descended in tense silence. As we crossed the hospital lobby, Ryan burst through the main doors, disheveled from his flight. His eyes widened when he saw Richard's hand on my arm. Harper! He started toward us, but Richard's associate stepped between us. Your wife's helping me sort out a minor accounting issue, Richard called out. We'll have her back in no time. That's when I saw it, the slight nod between Ryan and Richard. The pieces clicked into place. Ryan's insistence on staying in California, his knowledge of the company's troubles, his sudden appearance. How long? I asked Ryan. How long have you been working with him? Ryan's face fell. It's not what you think. I was trying to protect the company, protect you. By helping him steal from my father? By keeping the business alive. Ryan stepped closer, lowering his voice. The market's changing, Harper. Your father's old-school methods were killing the company. Richard had contacts, opportunities. Opportunities to what? Push my father off a dock. That wasn't supposed to happen, Richard cut in. Samuel found the transfer records. He was going to ruin everything. My phone buzzed. Evelyn. Police are reviewing security footage. Stall them. I yanked my arm free from Richard. Show me these opportunities then. Show me how destroying my family's company was somehow saving it. Richard checked his watch again. The board meets in 4 hours. Come to the office now, I'll explain everything. She's not going anywhere with you. Ryan moved toward me, but I stepped back. Actually, I am. I held up my phone, showing the banking app. Because I just transferred everything from those offshore accounts back to the company's main account. And I'm guessing whatever deal you have planned needs that money. Richard's facade cracked. You're bluffing. Those accounts need dual authorization. From a Winslow family member? Yeah, they do. Dad made me a signatory years ago. Insurance, he called it. Ryan grabbed my wrist. Harper, stop. You don't understand what you're doing. I twisted free. I understand perfectly. My husband and my father's best friend conspired to steal his company. The only question is why. Because he was dying. Ryan exploded. Your father's been sick for months. Richard found out and knew the company would collapse when he died. We were trying to secure its future. The world tilted. What are you talking about? Dad's not. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, Richard said quietly. Diagnosed 3 months ago. He was going to tell you after the merger went through. My mother's unopened letter suddenly felt heavier in my pocket. The timing, the secrets, the desperate moves for control, it all made horrible sense. Harper! Evelyn's voice cut through my thoughts. She stood by the hospital entrance with 2 police officers. Your father's awake. He's asking for you. Richard stepped forward. Whatever you're thinking. Officers, I called out. These men were just leaving. And I have some security footage you should see. As the police approached, Ryan made one last attempt. Everything I did was for us. For our future. I pulled off my wedding ring and pressed it into his hand. No. Everything you did was for you. Walking back to Dad's room, I finally opened my mother's letter. Inside was a single sentence. Trust your instincts, they'll never steer you wrong. I found Dad propped up in bed, looking frail but alert. The monitors beeped steadily as he reached for my hand. I should have told you, he whispered. About the cancer or about Richard? Both. He squeezed my hand. I thought I could handle everything myself. To protect you from it all. Inside, I could hear the police questioning Richard and Ryan. Soon they'd want my statement, evidence, explanations. But for now, I just held my father's hand and watched the Alaskan sunrise paint the sky in shades of redemption. The board meeting room felt like a tomb. Pairs of eyes watched me as I laid out the evidence: bank statements, doctored invoices, security footage from the docks. Richard sat at the far end, his usual confidence replaced by something darker. "These allegations are serious," Barbara Chen, our senior board member, said. But without Samuel here to corroborate. The door opened. Dad shuffled in, leaning heavily on Evelyn. The room collectively gasped. "I think I can corroborate just fine," he said, lowering himself into a chair. Richard's face went ash-white. "Samuel, you should be in the hospital." "So should you after what you did to him," I snapped, but Dad held up his hand. "Let me handle this, Harper." He turned to Richard. 30 years. We built this company from nothing. Why?" Richard's laugh was hollow. "Why? Because you were dying and too stubborn to plan for it. Because your daughter was off playing banker in California while I kept this company alive. By stealing from it? By adapting." Richard slammed his hand on the table. "The market's changing. Your old school methods would have bankrupted us within a year of your death. I was protecting your legacy. By trying to kill me?" The room went silent. Richard's composure cracked entirely. "That wasn't. I just wanted to talk." "You were angry, not listening. When you stumbled, you pushed him," I interrupted. "Marcus saw everything." Richard's eyes narrowed. "Marcus should worry about his own problems. Immigration fraud is still a crime." Dad straightened in his chair. "Leave him out of this." "Why should I? Everyone's so concerned about protecting their precious secrets." Richard pulled out his phone. "Speaking of secrets, Harper, did you tell the board about the merger you abandoned in California? About how your career there is effectively over?" My stomach dropped. On screen was an email from Ryan to Richard dated weeks ago. "Harper's promotion depends on this merger. Use that if you need to." "Or about the real reason your mother died." Richard continued. "Samuel, should I tell her or will you?" Dad's face went pale. "Richard, don't." "She was coming to confront me," Richard said, eyes locked on mine. "About money missing from the company back then. Her car accident wasn't an accident at all. Your father covered it up to protect the company's reputation. To protect you from the truth." The room spun. I grabbed the table for support. "Dad." His silence was answer enough. "You see," Richard stood. "We all have secrets. We all do what we must to protect what matters. I moved money to save this company. Samuel hid the truth to save his family. Even your precious Ryan lied to protect his ambitions." "Enough!" Evelyn's voice cracked through the room. "Harper, there's something else you need to know." She pulled out a familiar envelope, Mom's letter. But this one was different from the one in my pocket. "I found this in Richard's office last night," she said. "It's the real letter. The one you have is a fake." My hand shook as I opened it. Mom's handwriting filled the page. "My dearest Harper, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. Richard is embezzling from the company. I have proof, but he's threatened to hurt you if I come forward. Whatever happens, know that I love you." The date was the day she died. Richard lunged for the letter, but 2 board members grabbed him. Through the glass walls, I saw police officers approaching. "You killed her," I whispered. "All these years. I protected this company," Richard shouted as the officers entered. "Everything I did was for—" "Take him out," Barbara ordered. Police led him away, still ranting about protection and necessity. In the chaos that followed, I felt Dad's hand on my shoulder. "Harper, I'm so sorry. After your mother, I thought hiding the truth would protect you. Like I tried to hide my illness," he continued. "Like Richard tried to hide his theft. We all thought we were protecting something." He squeezed my shoulder. Maybe it's time we stopped protecting and started trusting instead. I looked around the room, at the board members avoiding my eyes, at Evelyn's tears, at the empty chair where Richard had sat. Everything I'd believed about my life, my family, my mother's death, all built on lies told in the name of protection. The real question was, what truth would be left when all the protective lies fell away? The police station's interview room felt smaller with each passing hour. Richard sat across from me, handcuffed but somehow still carrying himself like he was in a board meeting. "I want to make a deal," he said. "You killed my mother." The words felt strange in my mouth, too simple for the weight they carried. "Life's more complicated than that, Harper." He leaned forward. "Your father's cancer treatment? Those experimental drugs keeping him alive? They're being paid for through one of my offshore accounts. Accounts you so cleverly froze." My hands clenched under the table. "You're lying." "Ask Evelyn." The door opened. Evelyn stood there, her face ashen. "Harper, we need to talk." In the hallway, she couldn't meet my eyes. "The treatments?" Richard's been arranging them through his connections. Insurance wouldn't cover experimental procedures, but he found a way. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I knew about the embezzlement," she whispered. "I found out 6 months ago." Richard showed me proof that the money was going to Samuel's treatment. I chose to stay quiet. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "You knew he killed Mom?" "No. I only knew about the recent financial dealings. I thought he was helping us." My phone buzzed, a text from the hospital. Dad's condition was deteriorating. The experimental treatment had been discontinued due to payment issues. Back in the interview room, Richard smiled. "Tick-tock, Harper. Your father has maybe 3 days without that treatment. I can make one phone call, transfer the funds." "In exchange for what?" "Drop the charges. Tell them you made a mistake about your mother. About everything. You're asking me to choose between justice for Mom and Dad's life? I'm offering you a chance to save what's left of your family." He spread his cuffed hands. "Isn't that what this was all about? Protecting the family?" The detective watching through the glass tapped on the window, my signal that time was running out. They needed my official statement. "What would Mom do?" I asked Evelyn. "She'd fight," Evelyn said. "But she'd also do anything to save someone she loved." I turned back to Richard. "One condition. You tell me exactly what happened that night. The whole truth." His smile faded. "She confronted me at the office. Said she had proof of the embezzlement. I tried to explain that the company needed creative financing to survive, but she wouldn't listen. When she threatened to go to the police." He paused. "I didn't mean to push her so hard. The stairs. It happened so fast. And then you made it look like a car accident." He nodded slowly. "Your father suspected, but he couldn't prove it. Losing her nearly destroyed him. That's why, when he got sick, His voice cracked. "I had to try to make it right somehow." The detective entered. "Miss Winslow, we need your statement." I looked at Richard, this man who'd killed my mother, saved my father, destroyed our family, and preserved it all at once. The man who'd taught me about business when I was young, who'd attended every school graduation, who'd become both destroyer and protector of everything I held dear. "I'm ready to make my statement," I said, not taking my eyes off Richard. "But first, I need you to witness a deal." I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app. "I'm transferring control of the offshore accounts back to you, Richard. One account stays active, the one funding Dad's treatment. The rest goes to repaying what you stole. And the charges? Stay. All of them. Mom deserves justice, even if it's 20 years late." He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. "You really are your mother's daughter." "No," I said, standing. "I'm my father's daughter, too. That's why I'm choosing both justice and mercy." I turned to the detective. "I'm ready now." As I left the room, I heard Richard call out, "Harper? I really did love your family. All of you." "I know," I said, not turning back. "That's what makes it worse." 6 months later, I stood at the helm of a fishing boat, watching the Alaskan sunrise paint the water gold. Dad sat beside me, thinner but alive, his experimental treatments working better than anyone had expected. "Richard's sentencing is tomorrow," I said, adjusting our course slightly. Dad nodded, his eyes on the horizon. 15 years with the plea deal. Better than life. "You going to be there?" "No." He pulled his jacket tighter against the morning chill. Said everything I needed to say in my victim impact statement. Besides, someone needs to run the morning catch. I smiled at that. The business was recovering slowly but surely. The board had appointed me interim CEO while Dad focused on his health. Turned out all those years in Silicon Valley taught me something useful after all. My phone buzzed, Ryan's divorce lawyer with final paperwork. Below that notification was an email from Richard's attorney about the last of the repayment transfers. And under that, a message from Evelyn about dinner plans. "You know what your mother used to say about sunrises?" Dad asked, breaking into my thoughts. "She said they were nature's way of giving us second chances." "Is that why we're really out here? Looking for second chances?" He turned to face me. "Harper, I need to show you something." From his pocket, he pulled out a weathered envelope, another letter from Mom. My heart clenched. How many more secrets are we going to find? "This isn't a secret. It's a goodbye I should have given you years ago." He handed me the envelope. "She wrote one every year on your birthday just in case something happened to her. This was the last one." With trembling fingers, I opened it. "My dearest Harper, by the time you read this, you'll have learned the truth about Richard, about the company, maybe even about me. But here's what matters. Every choice I made for love. Not for revenge, not for justice, but for love. Your father will blame himself. Richard will justify himself. Everyone will try to protect everyone else until the truth gets buried under good intentions. Don't let that happen. Choose truth even when it hurts. Choose love even when it's hard. But most of all, choose yourself. The company, the money, even justice, they're all just things. You, my brave, brilliant daughter, are what matters. Love always. Mom." I folded the letter carefully, watching the fishing boats appearing on the horizon, our fleet, heading out for the morning catch. "I got another offer from my old firm in California," I said. "Vice president position, triple my current salary." Dad's expression didn't change. And I turned it down. The board approved my 5-year plan for the company yesterday. We're expanding into sustainable fishing, starting a training program for local kids. "Your mother would be proud," he said softly. "Of the business? Of the woman you've become." The radio crackled, Marcus calling in from one of the other boats. I answered, giving coordinates for the morning's best spots just like Dad had taught me. Just like I'd teach others. "Harper," Dad said as I finished the call, "about Richard's sentencing tomorrow." "I'm going," I said. "Not for revenge. Not even for justice, really. Just for closure." He nodded, understanding. "And after, we keep building. Keep choosing truth over protection, growth over revenge." I smiled. "Keep watching the sunrises." As if on cue, the sun broke fully over the horizon, turning the water into liquid fire. In the distance, I could see our fleet spreading out, each boat finding its own path through the waves. My phone buzzed again, a text from Evelyn. "Found one more letter. But maybe some mystery should stay mysterious." I looked at Dad, at the boats, at the sunrise offering its daily chance at redemption. Then I typed back, "Save it. Some stories are better left unfinished." Through all, Mom had taught me that love was more important than answers. Dad had shown me that healing was more valuable than vengeance. And I had finally learned that sometimes the biggest act of protection was letting go of the need to protect at all. The morning catch was waiting. It was time to get to work.